A single drop of blood. A company worth $9 billion. A single drop of blood. A company worth $9 billion. A young founder on the cover of every magazine, hailed as the next Steve Jobs. And underneath all of it, a machine that did not actually do what the world was told it could do. The story of Theranos is the most famous fraud of the startup era. And it ends with a question that hangs over every bold promise ever made to investors. When does selling a dream become a crime? For this whole series, we have watched the power of the state pressing against one person, searching you, tracking you, taking from you, following you home. This final story turns the camera completely around. Here, it is one person whose words reach everyone. The investors who put in hundreds of millions, and the patients who trusted their blood to a machine. Over the next 12 minutes, how Theranos rose, how it fell, and what a jury decided actually crossed the line from ambition into fraud. Because that line, it turns out, is narrower and stranger than you might think. It begins in 2003 with a 19-year-old who drops out of Stanford to start a company. Her name is Elizabeth Holmes, and her idea is genuinely seductive. Today, a blood test means a needle, a vial, a lab, a weight. Holmes promised to erase all of that. Her company, Theranos, said its device, called the Edison, could run hundreds of tests from a single, painless drop of blood from your finger, quickly and cheaply, maybe one day in every drugstore and home. If it were real, it would change medicine. That if is the whole story, and the world wanted it to be real. Money poured in. At its peak around 2014, Theranos was valued at roughly $9 billion, briefly making Holmes a paper billionaire and one of the most celebrated founders in America. Its board filled with famous names, former statesmen and military leaders. It struck a deal with the pharmacy chain Walgreens to put its testing in some stores. And the prestige fed on itself. A board of household names made the company look unimpeachable. A soaring valuation made skeptics look foolish for doubting. Each famous believer became a reason for the next person not to look too closely. That is how a story, more than a product, can carry a company for years. Notice what made this so powerful. It was not just a product, it was a story. A brilliant young woman, a revolutionary machine, a future where a drop of blood could save your life. Investors, reporters, and partners all wanted to be part of it. And a beautiful enough story can make very smart people stop asking the most basic question: does the thing actually work? In 2015, someone finally asked it in print. A Wall Street Journal reporter, John Carreyrou, published an investigation built on internal documents and whistleblowers. What it reported was devastating. The Edison did not work as advertised. Behind the scenes, the investigation said, Theranos was running many of its blood tests not on its own revolutionary device, but on ordinary commercial machines made by other companies. The very kind of equipment it claimed to have replaced. And the finger prick results it did produce had serious accuracy problems. For a tech demo, unreliable results are an embarrassment. For a medical test, they are something else entirely. Because real people were making real health decisions based on the numbers. From there, the fall was fast. Regulators moved in. The Walgreens partnership ended. In 2018, the Securities and Exchange Commission charged Holmes with fraud, and she settled those civil charges without admitting or denying wrongdoing, paying a penalty and accepting a ban from leading a public company. That same year, Theranos dissolved. The $9 billion company was worth nothing. But a collapsed company and a civil settlement are not the same as a crime. The harder question, the criminal one, was still coming. Did Elizabeth Holmes simply fail at something hard while believing in it? Or did she knowingly deceive the people who trusted her? Those are not the same thing, and the difference between them is the difference between a sad story and a prison sentence. That question went to a federal court in the case United States versus Holmes. And to understand the verdict, you have to understand what fraud actually is, legally. Fraud is not failure. It is not even lying in some loose, everyday sense. Criminal fraud requires intent to deceive, proof that a person knowingly made false statements to get something of value from someone who relied on them. A founder who genuinely believes in a product that does not pan out has not committed a crime. A founder who knows the truth and hides it to keep the money flowing has. The entire trial was a fight over which of those describes Elizabeth Holmes. At trial, the two sides told that exact split-screen story. Prosecutors argued that Holmes knew about the device's failures and hid them, pointing to internal results and warnings she had received. Her defense argued that she was a true believer who genuinely thought the technology would work, and that being wrong is not the same as lying. The jury's job was to decide, count by count, which story the evidence supported beyond a reasonable doubt. On January 3, 2022, the jury delivered a verdict, and it was not a simple one. It convicted Holmes on 4 counts of fraud against investors, 1 count of conspiracy, and 3 counts of wire fraud for deceiving specific investors who had put in large sums. On those counts, the jury found that she had crossed the line, that she knowingly deceived the people funding the company. But on the counts that accused her of defrauding patients, the jury found her not guilty. And on 3 more investor counts, the jurors could not agree at all, so the judge declared a mistrial on those. Convicted on some, acquitted on others, deadlocked on the rest. It is tempting to read the patient acquittals as a verdict that the technology was fine or that no one was hurt. It is not. An acquittal means only that the prosecution did not prove those particular charges beyond a reasonable doubt, the highest bar in law. Not that the underlying conduct was harmless. One juror later suggested the patient link was simply harder to pin directly on Holmes. And the contrast makes the point sharply. Theranos' former president, Ramesh Balwani, her business and former romantic partner, was tried separately, and he was convicted on all 12 counts, including the patient counts, and sentenced to nearly 13 years. As for Holmes, in November 2022, she was sentenced to about 11 years and 3 months in federal prison. The young woman once compared to Steve Jobs was now a convicted fraudster, but precisely a fraudster of investors on 4 specific counts proven to a jury. So where exactly is the line that Holmes crossed? Because here is the uncomfortable truth. A lot of what Theranos did looks like ordinary startup behavior. Founders pitch a future that does not exist yet. They project confidence they do not fully feel. Fake it till you make it is practically a Silicon Valley slogan, and most of the time the law leaves it alone. The line is intent and reliance. Selling an ambitious vision is legal. Knowingly telling people something false, that a machine works when you know it does not, to get them to hand over money they would not otherwise risk, is fraud. The jury concluded that, with investors, Holmes had done exactly that. And there is a reason the stakes felt higher here than in an ordinary bad investment. A failed app costs you money. A blood test that gives the wrong answer can cost you a diagnosis. That is why the patient dimension haunted the whole case, even where the specific counts did not stick to Holmes. And why Balwani's conviction on those counts matters to the full picture. Theranos is where this series ends, and it is a fitting place. Because under every episode we have watched, there has been one question wearing different costumes. The police searching your pockets, tracking your phone, taking your property, swabbing your cheek, following you to your door, and now a founder selling a miracle that was not real. Each time the law's job was the same, to find the line. The line between a stop and an arrest, between identifying you and investigating you, between a bold promise and a deliberate lie. That is what all of these cases really are. Not dramatic stories about famous people, but arguments about where a line falls as technology, money, and power keep moving it. The Constitution does not draw those lines once and for all. It hands us the tools, and every generation has to pick them up and draw them again. Thank you for watching this series. If you want to keep seeing how a single case can redraw the rules we all live by, this channel will keep finding them, one line at a time.